joining us from. We've got Patricia from the Indemnity Program in Washington, D.C. So thanks for joining us. I see Patricia a lot on our webinars. It's nice to see. And Charlie from White Cube. Hello. And we got Megan from Ottawa, represent Canada and Oregon. We've got another Canadian and someone, Catherine, joining us from Ireland, and Amanda from Stockholm, and Simone from TBA 21 in Vienna. We've got Michael from Delft in the Netherlands, and so it's a very international crowd already. I would love to see that. We've got some Andrew from Cleveland, Ohio, at the University Lab, and Muriel from Luxembourg, and the list goes on. We've got Italy, and we've got also England, East Anglia, London, Pittsburgh, Iceland, Harvard, Guggenheim, Bilbao, California, Munich. We got it going on. Very international crowd, which I am so happy to see. And the National Gallery from Washington, D.C. That's a nice one. Thank you for joining us. A couple of people from there. And also Magdalena from Poland. So yeah, I think I can't forget Louisville, Kentucky. That would be wrong. So let's get this party started. I think we're going to begin now. I am Annika Eriksson, founder and CEO of ArtEvolve, and I am really happy to host this today's ArtEvolve series on sustainable exhibition planning. And I have with me here today the lovely Kim Craxon. I'm sorry, I just butchered your name, Kim.
It depends on, there's different pronunciations. I answer to all of them. So
appreciate that. And also Maria Garcia, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And let me make sure that I give you your titles you are due. So Maria is the CEO of Bind Ethics, which is a really interesting and innovative company that we are going to be talking about today. And I met Maria actually because we were the co-winners of the prestigious prize, which I don't know, Maria, maybe you can say better than me, because I always seem to stumble over the exact title, because it's like the ESG World Cup UK National Finals Entrepreneurship winners. That's us.
Exactly.
So well done us. We co-won that a few months back, and I think it was December or so. And so that's how I met Maria and found out about her really interesting business, which I'm excited to share with you all today. And Kim, you are the conservator specializing in sustainable solutions for cultural heritage, an advisor to the Gallery Climate Coalition, and director of materials at Key Culture.
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also a key coach in the Key Futures program, and that's kind of also where we met, if I remember correctly.
Is that where we met? I'm trying to remember now, because now we have all these different touch points. But I think you're right. I think that is the place where we met. I think I was giving you shtick for asking me so many questions to answer.
Sounds about right.
But things improved from there, luckily. And now we, I think we know each other pretty well at this point, Kim. We've had a lot of chats about sustainability and lots of different things, issues in the kind of heritage sector, from, fair wages and all kinds of different things. So thank you so much for joining us. I really welcome you both. And yesterday was International Women's Day, right? Look at us three here. Don't need a man. Well done us. And so, yeah, I'm excited to kick this off. So I am going to start by talking a little bit about, okay, let's put all this in context. So we're all here today to think about sustainable exhibition planning, but why is that important? Why is sustainability in general important in the art world? Well, so we're going to talk about a little bit about that. I am also going to start off by talking about kind of the biggest picture of why sustainability, I mean, we could talk a long time about why sustainability is important in general. I'm just going to very nutshell mention the fact that I am now halfway through a pregnancy, and so that's exciting, and bringing new life into this world. And we are now at a point in our society and world and lives where I have friends that have confided in me that they have decided not to have kids because of the climate emergency and a fear that, you know, they're going to be growing up in a kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare. So, and I thought about that actually before deciding to have another child. And, you know, I personally came to the conclusion that my kids could maybe be part of the solution, and, you know, not to kind of give up hope and stop myself from leading my best life. But, you know, that's a pretty serious state of affairs, right? When humans stop procreating because they have lost hope that there will be any kind of decent future for their children. So this isn't just any, you know, this is no longer a kind of nice to have tick boxing exercise, I hope. You know, this is now a kind of incredibly important priority number one, or maybe two, we'll let slide, but top of the list, we hope. And so that's my little global context spiel. But for the from the art world perspective, obviously, we are in the culture sector in such a unique position where, you know, museums are trusted educators of society, and artists and museums and curators are in a position where they can really help people to envision a future, a positive future in which, you know, we can kind of make things better. And it's not, and I think actually the really important thing right now is to reframe the narrative, right? Because we have to go from people thinking, oh, I just have to give everything up and it sucks and the economy is going to collapse and it's all, you know, it's not going to work anyway because China's not going to do it and the government's not, you know, all this kind of negativity, and try and reframe it to, you know, here are some wonderful things that could make our lives better. Let's work towards this great future where it's a fair society for all, right? And so I just want to share with you very quickly a exhibition or two which have done that in the last couple of years, which are very cool. I'm sharing my screen, and apologies if I'm not doing this correctly. Okay, so here is an example of which I have the catalog right here. It's really great. If anybody wants to get, you can get it right through the website. And it is the MoMA show from 2020, which was Nuri Oxman. And I'm just going to read out a little bit of the, you know, what it was all about, which was from tree bark and crustacean shells to silkworm webs and human breath, nature shapes Nuri Oxman's innovative design and production processes. As a designer, architect, and founding director of the Mediated Matter Group at the MIT Media Lab, Oxman has developed not only new ways of thinking about materials, objects, buildings, and construction methods, but also new frameworks for interdisciplinary, even interspecies collaborations. She collaborates with silkworms, among other things. And her pioneering approach, which she calls material ecology, brings together material science, digital fabrication techniques, organic design to create new possibilities for the future. While individually these works are beautiful and revolutionary, together they put forward a new philosophy of designing, making, and even unmaking the world around us. So that's hopeful and wonderful and amazing, right? I mean, I'm so happy that that exhibition exists, and it's really interesting. Please, everyone, go check it out on the website for more information about it. But one thing I can share with you very quickly is, look, here is the example of the silk.
All of the work that we do is about the,
and there's all these structures which she managed to kind of get silkworms to build in a pattern, but with different techniques. So that's just one example of all the different materials that she was working with. And then another example was Our Time on Earth, which I reviewed when I went to see it last year. It was a really great show. And again, it was about kind of scientists and artists and also communities, indigenous communities, all working together, problem solving, learning from one another. And just, it was a really interesting exhibition. And I encourage you to go, check it out on their website as well. Here's a quick image. This is that was looking at soil underneath our feet and all the organisms in it. And yeah, it was a really interesting exhibition. So, here are some great examples of, I'm gonna stop sharing now. Sorry. Those are just a few great examples of advocating for sustainability and how it can help society to process the need to change and actually reframe the narrative and take the steps it needs. When I was at COP26 in Glasgow, whatever that was, last year or the year before, I talked to a lot of sustainability experts, and they all agreed, scientists can talk about change till we're blue in the face, but that has not done the job. And what we need now are our storytellers, and our kind of, society's shamans, for lack of a better term, to kind of make people feel like they actually need to take these steps and do these things. So that is, in my opinion, the most important thing our sector can ever do for the world, and ever will do, probably. And but of course, we need to remain credible while we are doing those important things. And a great example of that is, Gary Hume was in the media a couple of years ago because he was asked to judge the BP National Portrait Gallery Awards. And he was like, BP, really, still? And, there's a lot of press around it. And he decided, of course, that he better remain credible while actively shaming the National Portrait Gallery. So he decided he better, send his exhibition that was about to travel to New York by sea freight and, do that from now on. So that was a wonderful decision on his part, and, a mental shift that he took. And I recently spoke to him about that, and we're hoping to collaborate on a case study about it all. But it was really, it's a great precedent. Now we need to move to the, systemic change piece. So anyway, in terms of remaining credible, I mean, the other aspect of this to keep in mind is setting standards. Museums are very well known and associated with setting standards. We have all experienced the fact that museums have been a little slow, I would say, to come on board the sustainability train. And that has potentially some, consequences, in that a lot of the rest of us are trying to feel our way through in this sector how we become more sustainable, and we don't have this kind of standard set of guidelines that everyone's used to museums providing for everyone else. So, how we navigate is another kind of aspect to this. And the other thing I would just quickly mention is that since, during the pandemic, there was a lot of stopping and a lot of less travel. There was a lot of reduction of carbon footprint. And since, more recently, obviously, things have kind of come back. And so, there's now this point of us kind of saying, well, where do we go from here? Is it going to be business as usual? Are we going to change our ways in the long term? If so, how are we going to do that? The art fairs are back, the exhibitions are back, the couriers are coming back, you know, all of these things that we hoped maybe would be a little bit more hybrid and a little bit more with a bit more remote oversight and a bit more, you know, reducing those carbon footprints. It's kind of a time where we don't know, is that going to happen? Is that not going to happen? So I think that's an important aspect. Then the final thing is I'm going to launch a poll now, which is about the Paris Accords, which are now getting closer. We have 7 years before 2030, which in museum terms is a blink of an eye, right? So, you know, how are we going to achieve our Paris Accord targets? So I'm going to launch a little poll, and I would like everyone to let us know how close you are in this big effort to achieve your Paris Accord targets. Are you taking small steps? Are you cooking with gas? Are you, you know, getting there with 50% done now or more? It would be really interesting for us to know how people are getting on with their efforts to meet their Paris Accord targets, because lots of us have committed to them. The GCC, which Kim and I are both members of, and Kim much more actively so, you know, the thing that you commit to in joining is these Paris Accord targets, right, to meet them. And it now has, what, 800 members from the art world? So, and before that, you know, there's plenty of government funded bodies that are required to do so as part of their government funding. So we're all pretty much there in terms of the will. And the question is, you know, how many people have taken the steps, have started taking the steps, and how far along down the path are they? So if anyone, let's see, we have quite a few people who have answered now. So I think I will leave it there. And it looks like, if I end the poll, does that mean it disappears? Let's see. I'll just leave it open for a second in case there's any stragglers, but it looks like most people don't know. That's the top answer, which is 40% of the answer, 42 now % of the answers, which is fair enough, understandable, but I am challenging you to go check later on. And the next most popular answer is taking small steps, which is 0 to 20% there. Okay, fair enough. Good to be on the road anyway. And then we've got making progress, 20 to 40% done. That's about 11% of you have answered that is the case, which is great. Rising to the challenge, 40 to 60% done. About 4% of you have indicated that. 60 to 80% done, 0, big fat 0. And then challenge, what challenge? 80 to 100%, woo! We've got 5% of you who are in that category. So, so that is really interesting. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that, and we will share those results in the recording. And so, interesting, right, for everyone to know where others are at. There are some of the larger institutions who, of course, are required to share a lot of information. And for example, I think Tate is one that is often looked at and quoted when it comes to, you know, their sustainability journey and kind of where they are on it. But in fact, I think a lot of national museums are required as part of their annual report to report on their carbon footprint and, you know, how much they've reduced it by, et cetera. So if you're interested in learning from the museums on that, that is one thing that you can do. I know that the Guggenheim Bilbao has joined us today, and I know from meeting their director at the World Art Foundation conference and seeing his really great presentation on their their audit, their sustainability audit, and all the changes that they made, that they've made some really fantastic changes. So if they will allow us, maybe we can send anyone that's interested forward on their presentation, which I think might be available through Key Culture or their website or somewhere. So they are a great example of an institution that has taken a lot of great steps that we can all learn from. So degrowth, Kim, you mentioned before we move on that you would like to spare a moment for the concept of degrowth.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like also we'll kind of touch upon this later in our discussion as well, is that everything has a burden, right? Like every material has a burden. There's different categories of burden. It's not just the carbon footprint, it's toxicity, it's land use, it's impact on communities. And I feel like we're hitting this, well, there's no magic bullet, right? There's no like material that's devoid of these environmental burdens. And so we're hitting a wall, and really to sort of reduce our impact, it requires us to perhaps have less exhibitions per year, right? Totally. Like instead of having like the cycle for a year, shipping artworks in, reducing it to 1 or 2 a year. And I think Tate is doing this. There's a few museums that are implementing degrowth, but I thought it was important to discuss a little bit before launching into the materials.
I think that is a great point. And I, as a CEO of a startup who has to look for investor, funds, and I definitely feel like I have just an opinion and a perspective on the kind of obsession with short-term growth of shareholders, and I think that it is fraught, obviously, in today's landscape. But it's also really exciting to see at the same time companies who have sustainability at the core of their practice, who are also successful and have had a lot of growth. Like my very first ever investment in a startup was in Oddbox in 2018 when they first started. And that investment has now, it's like 30x. And, if you do 10x as an investor, you're doing really well, but 30x is awesome. They've grown like 3,000%. They did really well out of the pandemic, but they're about addressing food waste. Food waste, 40% of food that is grown is wasted. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but anyway, they're a wonderful company, but also have had, tremendous growth. So I think one important point as well is to make to this kind of capitalist society, shareholder control world that we live in, that you can have both things, but you also should not need, constant growth. And from the museum perspective, yeah, I definitely agree. Taking the foot off the gas of activities makes a whole lot of sense. And actually, for not only sustainability reasons, but also, refocusing on collection care, maybe, since a lot of collection care has been often neglected over the last 20 years since blockbuster exhibitions came to the fore of everyone's obsession. And also, there's this idea that donors only want to give money to new acquisitions and new buildings, but that's not very sustainable. And I would argue that donors are a little bit more sophisticated, and maybe give them a bit of credit that maybe they would donate to things other than that these days. And also there is a precedence of slowing down exhibition programming when there are recessions on and budgets require it. So, why should this be any different? And who knows, maybe a kind of looming economic lull will help with producing that, less by choice, but more by necessity. But, when I was working at Tate back in 2010, there was this decision that was made at the time because of the 2008 crisis that they would slow down exhibition programming. So, you know, there are lots of precedents for this in the past. So that's a great point. Now, I'm just mindful of time, so I'm going to move on. Sustainable exhibitions and events. I have a lovely little image that Emma has provided me with, which I'm going to bring up, and we are going today to focus on materials. So while I'm bringing that up, let's talk about, oh wait, sorry, hold on. There's something that I neglected to do. So we're going to do that while I bring this image up. Kim and Maria, I gave a little bit of an introduction to you, but maybe you should give us a little bit more on yourselves, on you. Sorry about neglecting that. So Kim, do you want to start while I get
Sure. I was fine with your introduction, but yeah, my name is I'm a conservator of modern materials and contemporary art. I formerly worked at Studio Olafur Eliasson in Berlin for 8 years as the resident conservator, and that's sort of where I began my research into sustainable materials and packaging in particular. And through that, I became involved with key culture. I was at the helm of the Waste of Materials key book that is already so outdated. It's, I think, 2.5 years old already. But I planned this summer to update the key book. It's now called Materials Key Book, not Waste. We don't use the term waste anymore at Key Culture. I was one of the founding members of the Berlin Gallery Climate Coalition branch, and then through that I started working with London GCC, and I work on projects involving materials and packaging, and consult, you know, GCC member galleries and institutions. And then I also work as a key coach in the Key Futures program, which I mentioned previously. So that's
Thank you.
about it. Yeah.
That is great. And Maria, do you want to tell us a little bit more? I didn't give too much away about you yet.
I don't think you gave anything away. Okay, so my name is Maria, and I am the CEO of Bind Ethics, but I am a scientist. So my background is chemistry. I started working in industry around 10 years ago in pharmaceutical companies and the pharmaceutics world. Then I moved to healthcare, so working as a scientist in the lab. And from that, I moved to materials, ended up in biomaterials. And, you know, with the whole topic of sustainability, I got involved in green chemistry and developing green chemistry. So this is how then I had to set up my own company. If you really want to make a change and you want it to to make it happen the way you want it to happen, then you have to be a scientist and a businesswoman at the same time. And that's about me. So thank you, Annika, for this platform.
Sure, absolutely. And so we're going to talk in more detail about your exciting sustainable material-based product in just a second. But so just kind of introducing this in the kind of context amongst other related topics. So here we have a nice little infographic about sustainable exhibitions and events, and some of the different categories, right? So we've got materials to create the exhibition itself, the stands, the crates, etc. Materials for artworks, acrylic paint, and ports, and lots of different elements there to consider, which Kim has a lot of good experience thinking about. Materials for shipping, reusable crates being one of the aspects, as well as packaging, and freight, you know, considering more use of sea freight than the current very, very rare time it is used in the art world now, and staff travel, reducing staff travel wherever possible, because that is usually, you know, amongst the top 3 categories for most arts organizations. Freight, staff travel, and buildings are normally the biggest categories. So there definitely should be on the list somewhere. Buildings, of course, and climate controls. I know Key Culture is currently working on launching a great new course all about tackling climate controls in buildings. So maybe Emma can post a link to their website if anyone's interested in learning more about that. While we are here, there was a question I just saw I want to answer before I forget, from Christina Resti, which was, I was wondering if you have any experiences to share on how insurance companies have reacted to exhibition shipping requests via marine transport mediums. Thanks. So I will quickly answer that. Christina, thank you for asking. That's an important question. And you may all be aware or not be aware in the audience about the fact that the insurance companies were lobbied really by GCC a few years ago now to kind of make it easier, reduce the barrier of insurance from a sea freight perspective. And so they put together a task force of shipping and insurance experts to try and look at this issue. And they came up with a set of guidelines which would help to reduce risks associated with sea freight, to make insurers more comfortable with it. Those guidelines were just launched last month and are now have been accepted, I believe, by all insurers internationally who were part of this group that launched it. And my early feedback from my insurance contact, who was chairing that group, and I'm not going to say his name because his company is notoriously gets their, knickers in a twist if we ever mention them. So we're not, but they are the leading. I'm allowed to say they're the leading art insurer. And anyway, their feedback has been very positive so far, amongst dealers in particular, of embracing those new guidelines, which mean that you won't have to, as an insurance client, get pre-approval as long as you follow the guidelines. Now, we also, incidentally, I'm just a slight Articheck plug, have got those guidelines. We managed to get a hold of them, an early draft. We baked them into our virtual courier sea freight product. Our product is the only one with which you can actually demonstrate compliance to these guidelines. So, you can have the evidence, which is of course important if you want to ever make a claim. And so yeah, the answer is those barriers are coming down, and that's an exciting thing. Also, the guidelines themselves, everyone will be happy to know, is all about a checklist of reducing risk, which everybody will want to be doing in this webinar, I'm sure. So if you have further questions about the guidelines and what they entail, feel free to get in touch with us later on. So let's move swiftly on now. I'm gonna stop this share of this Swizzy infographic. And now, of course, I've lost my notes, which is always good. Oh, here we go. So now we are going to talk about changes and choices of materials currently being used. So Pim, would you like to do your screen sharing now? Some of the results of your survey on the packaging materials?
Oh, I don't know if I can share those. I just have a couple of images. I admittedly have not been on site for exhibition install for quite a few years. I was at a few art fairs in the past year or so, and it's nothing. I'm sure we're all fairly familiar with the usual suspects that we encounter as packaging materials in exhibition install, and here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and share. And art fairs, can you see this?
Yes.
The right screen? Yeah. Yeah, so it's essentially bubble wrap, right? I mean, you see bubble wrap, you see the foam corners, polyfoams in crates as cushioning, Tyvek, tons of plastic packaging tape, And we tried to counter some of these images that we were noticing at the art fair, with not best practices necessarily, but alternatives for bubble wrap. And granted, it's quite possible that this particular gallery had already unpacked these framed works and we're just using the blankets temporarily, but still, we're seeing an increased use of the moving blankets. I know there's been some backlash because they doesn't necessarily provide the same protection. And this is also a major concern when discussing alternative materials to the fossil fuel derived plastics that we're used to using. I mean, these materials have been tried and tested. We know that they function. Sometimes they don't though too. We do see damages as well to artworks that are wrapped in bubble wrap, depending on the incident and the impact.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. And as a conservator in a museum space, we were always saying to everyone, don't ever you dare use bubble wrap. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. It also leaves imprints on artworks. But still, I mean, it's still the go-to. It's
frames.
still the go-to.
Yeah, it leaves a lot of imprints on frames, especially ones that are newly painted, which is often the case for art fairs.
Right, so and metals as well. Like a lot of metals, it leaves imprints. So it's not the best material to use anyhow. And then, we also just, as far as covering furniture in plastic, flooring, preparing exhibition spaces, painting the walls, which we can also discuss a bit later, some tactics for reducing the need to paint the walls, using alternative hanging systems, not nailing into walls that require plaster afterwards, which is also a material that is disastrous in landfills. I'm going to stop my screen sharing now. Get back to, wait, no. Am I still screen sharing?
You are?
No, I don't want to though. How do I stop?
There should be a little button that says stop screen share on your top right hand corner.
I was blocked, sorry. There we go, sorry.
Yes. Thank you. So some of the issues we have obviously with materials that are currently in use is they're often single use. The supply chain is not always obvious, or is usually not obvious, I would say. Even you mentioned Tyvek. I only found out a few months ago about the evils of Tyvek and the fact that it's manufactured by DuPont, which is like on the top 10 list of polluters and terrible companies in the world, including letting a city be devastatingly polluted and not telling them about it and not doing anything about it. So they're really evil. There's movies that have been made about how horrible they are, and yet Tyvek is just like one of the most common in the conservation museum world anyway. When I was an active conservator, it was Tyvek here, Tyvek there, Tyvek everywhere. So
yeah, absolutely. And even Tyvek leaves imprints on artworks, as I'm sure you've encountered. Like all these materials, as the thing is, like these are the tried and tested materials, but they also cause damage. And there's a certain risk assessment that always needs to be made when using any materials in packaging. But I also wanted to bring up the point that these materials that I just listed, the plastic wraps, the Tyvek, the foams, we assume that we throw them away in a recycling bin and they're going to get recycled. When in fact, everything that we just talked about will not be recycled curbside. It's because they're considered soft plastics. And they get caught in the machinery at the recycling facilities. And so the Tyvek plastic wrap, foams, all of these plastics are sorted out. And you can, yes, I saw in the comment, you can wash Tyvek and reuse it. It's true. You can reuse a lot of these materials as well, but it's also the process of producing, there's the extraction of petrochemicals, and then the toxicity to oftentimes, like the communities that are located near these factories, like marginalized communities. There's issues that we have to consider in many aspects.
A whole lot. Although one thing I will say about sheeting is that I know, because I am currently at this time of year looking at ways I can protect my seedlings from frost, and so a lot of gardeners use plastic sheets with hoops in order to make polytunnels, and so that's another thing to consider in terms of reuse, is to kind of donate it to people that are growing stuff,
Right.
And so they don't have to get that from scratch from a virgin source. But so anyway, yes, there are certainly a lot of different potential solutions to these problems, and how they're disposed of, as you mentioned, is a major factor, and checking that they are really disposed of in the way that people say they're going to be disposed of.
Right.
Like, there's been a lot of controversy in the UK around the fact that we diligently put stuff in the recycle bin and it ends up in offshore somewhere in the ocean, not in the council has not disposed of it in the way that they have said they would, and that is of course depressing, and there are different ways of tackling that issue, but yeah, there's just something to kind of, I don't know, for in my own personal world, I've tried as hard as possible to reduce plastic coming into my house in order to mitigate that risk a little bit.
Right, and then some comments that were made in the chat. The plastic sheeting and stretch wrap can be recycled at most supermarkets. That is true. I didn't finish my whole spiel about the plastics. They're not curbside recyclable. So when you throw them in the waste, the recycling bins for plastics, we assume that they're sorted out and recycled, and they're not. There are collection points. There's also companies that offer programs that pick up difficult to recycle plastics. Depending on your city and region, you can look into it. But otherwise, if you throw away these plastics in the recycling bin and they're sorted out, not recycled, they're incinerated under the euphemism of energy recovery. This is the term that's used because it produces a small, minuscule amount of energy when burning plastics. And there's a whole, you can fall into a rabbit hole fairly quickly. There's debates on whether it's the scrubbers on these incineration plants and how much CO2 is actually being released, and proponents for it. Governments are obviously proponents and lobbying for it because there's nothing, what are you going to do with the waste but burn it?
Yes. So just mindful of the time, we need to move on. But what I will quickly call out before we do that is this great comment from Meg Thomas about, is there a compendium of alternative and green materials available in the market that have been Audi tested and deemed archival? Kim, I'm going to let you answer that one.
I know, because this is the thing. I mean, are you using these materials for storage? Because then Audi testing would make sense. Packaging for shipping, this is also something I would love for research to be done. Maybe I do it myself, maybe not, depending on how much energy I have. But looking at tipping points within crates. But these materials, all the paper products, paper-based products are not going to pass the Audi test. And so it's also, again, like risk assessment, understanding that you can't pack certain metals with paper, and just understanding what materials you're working with, which is where conservators come into play in all of this. But then also for short-term transport, it's a question of how quickly acidic gases can accumulate, or how quickly these the packaging materials could potentially harm the materials comprising the artwork. So that's my answer to that.
Well, and it brings up a great underlying issue we had pre-existing concerns about sustainability anyway, which is that so many things that are wrapped in temporary packaging and crating end up in long-term storage, and in materials that are not appropriate for long-term storage, and that is already an existing issue in the industry. And it would be great if we could kind of tackle both of these issues together by, you know, having kind of more clear communication around temporary versus long-term packaging and storage, and kind of procedures around that in general, I think.
Yeah, and even archival plastic, archival materials do degrade over time. You know, it's recommended to check on them and switch them out after, you know, 20 years, 30 years. You know, so nothing's archival in the sense of we never have to. It's truly archival.
Good point. So now, Maria, we are going to come on to give you the stage. If you would please present with your slides about the sustainable and biodegradable adhesive that you have invented, and which is super exciting. You've specifically invented this for use in engineered wood, which is a material that gets used in our industry quite a bit, from, you know, packaging and crating and temporary walls for exhibitions, as well as for, you know, art materials themselves. So we would love to hear from you about this.
Well, thanks, Annika. I'm going to share my screen, and let me see. Share. Am I sharing?
You are sharing?
Good. So I tried to translate this as, you know, to the, like, from scientific point of view, like translate it into like an art kind of way of talking. I don't think it's going to work, but I tried.
We'll score you at the end and let you know how you've done.
Let me see. So I am going to start by asking everyone a question. So if you can just, like, you know, ask yourself the following question, which is, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word formaldehyde? So, you know, just for, you know, everyone here, just to think, like, what do you think of when you hear formaldehyde?
I think toxic. Mine is toxic.
I'm going to give you an example of something that somebody once said to me. This was it. And they were like, "Oh, Damien Hirst." that was the first thing that came to their mind. And so, yeah, like, this artist had some problems with the levels of formaldehyde out of his artwork. And
can I just tell you that I was working at Tate when Damien Hirst gifted a bunch of these to Tate. And I was there in the storage area one day when there was a leak and people had to get the hazmat suits on, and, you know, it was a whole big production. Everyone was rolling their eyes and like, oh God, you know, this is why do we have this?
That's great. But basically here the message is, like, formaldehyde was not just only a problem for the artist, it's a problem for everyone. So that is just an example, actually, and I'm gonna explain why. And this is it because formaldehyde is a nasty chemical that is used to make adhesives, binders. 90% of the engineered wood that, you know, we use to make furniture or construction materials, and 90% uses a formaldehyde-based adhesive. So the adhesive is made up with this nasty chemical, right? And there are a couple of problems associated to that. So the first thing is that formaldehyde in itself is toxic, is carcinogenic, and it's a corrosive chemical that it's been identified by the scientific committee of the European Union as one of the 5 greatest indoor pollutants that should be removed from production. That is the main, one of the main problems is a health problem, but then there is another one, which is an environmental problem. But is it because of the adhesive? Even though, let's say, wood is a sustainable material and is biodegradable, but because of the adhesive, engineered wood products are not recyclable, and they end up in the landfill where they remain forever. So this is a huge environmental problem, and it is due to the glue, to the adhesive. And of course, because the adhesive does come from fossil fuels, it has a heavy CO2 footprint associated to it. So, you know, wood is a sustainable material. In the moment that you mix it with a glue, then your product is not sustainable anymore. So the solution for this one was an adhesive that would be sustainable and non-toxic, not derived from fossil fuels and biodegradable. I'm not the first one working on this, and something that Kim mentioned before, like there's been other bioadhesives, or there's been research on bioadhesives, but then you would use something like soy, which is a crop, you know, so then you take arable land and water, and then yeah, you have a biodhesive, an adhesive that doesn't come from fossil fuels, but how sustainable is it at the end of the day, right?
And transit, right? A lot of soy is produced quite far away.
Exactly. So soy, proteins, different research is being made. We're very happy because the main raw material for our adhesive is actually a source of food waste. So we're using waste to make an adhesive, to knowing that we are not competing with, you know, arable land or taking fresh water to make it, and definitely reducing the CO2 footprint. Our adhesive reduces the CO2 footprint 80% in comparison to formaldehyde. And this is the idea, this is the concept. If you use our adhesive and then you use wood, like to make the engineered wood product, at the end of the day, you will be able to compost it or to put it back in nature. It will be biodegraded and
Right.
yeah, and then you go into the circular. You can also burn it. So then you know that you can't burn engineered wood. So, you know, when we have like these pieces of furniture or old pieces of old engineered wood, we can't put it into the chimney or something. And it is, again, because of the adhesive. So our glue can be burned and you'll be okay. So then that's the concept that, like, or the context behind the invention. I would like to answer the questions that you proposed, Annika, which is like, how could this be adopted in the art world? And you know, so the answer is like, it could be used in crates or stands or shelves, anything that is actually made out of wood, and it requires like frames, for example. So if you use the frame, you glue it, you also use glue, so that would also be an application. Actually, we're doing some research, and our adhesive can also be used with cardboard or paper. So, you know, there are other applications. The main challenge that we are facing is the fact that manufacturers do not want to adopt this technology just yet. They've been using the formaldehyde-based one for 100 years. So, you know, now I'm knocking at the door and they're like, well, why are we going to change now? So the plan that
a pretty compelling case for why we need to change now, Maria.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all hearing about like, but like they're all hearing about the change and sustainability, and actually governments are pushing for them to reduce the CO2 footprint. So it's going to come a time that they will have no alternative. And as I said, formaldehyde, it should be removed from production. So I hope that they have to change, but my plan to overcome this challenge now is to basically create a number of case studies. I would like to partner up with organizations or artists, museums, and create like small case studies, provide them with small quantities of engineered wood that has been made with our adhesive. And you know, if you can do it at a small scale, why wouldn't you be able to, you know, create a huge exhibition with sustainable products? That is the first, you know, that is one of the plans that we have, create multiple case studies across different areas. And of course, customer awareness. If now the people that are in like this webinar, if you ask your distributor or your retailer, okay, what is your product sustainable? Like this engineered wood that I am acquiring today, is it which adhesive are you using? Is it bios? Is it a bio? Is it a bio product? Do you have an alternative? So at least they're going to start hearing that customers are actually asking for that. And you know, like awareness, the exposure is, I think, what is going to make make it easy for me to just go and say, well, they're asking for that, and I actually have the solution. So then let's put it together. And that's the thing. So right now we're counting, and this is important as a material, and because this is a webinar for sustainable materials, we currently count on the support of the Forestry Commission. So this project has been partially funded by the Forestry Commission. We're looking for a formulation for an adhesive that can work especially with UK grown wood. So if you imagine the final wood product would be a product that it's made with a sustainable adhesive and wood that did not have to come all the way from China, just like wood that was grown in the UK, no transportation, and then you have your final piece of wood. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but someone, Donald Sale, is saying that your microphone is too low. I can hear you fine, but I don't know if other people feel like it's low.
I can hear fine as well, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'm about to finish. I will speak up a bit and just saying, let me think, just saying that so whatever country you're in, if you're buying products and that are made of wood, and that wood is being grown in your home country, then that product is going to be in itself more sustainable. So in the case of the UK, if the wood is grown here, the product will be more sustainable because you're avoiding transportation mainly.
Of course, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So this is it, I think, from my side.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. I think I'm sure that people in the audience are, very interested to hear about your product and your invention. I think it's really exciting, and I know that I've been putting you in touch with some different players in the art world, and I think that if it is possible for us to help you to raise awareness or to advocate for this kind of change by showing how they can be the change, then I think that that would be really wonderful. So if anybody else wants to comment on that, Kim, you go for it first.
I do. I have a question for you. Of course I do. No, it's a very interesting product. The one question I have is, you mentioned it's biodegradable, and then it's on the slide it said compostable, and I was wondering, is it both, or does it like under what conditions does it actually degrade?
So this is an interesting question, because obviously we are checking all these parameters. Depending on the application and what you want it for, we can tweak the formulation so that it matches. So for example, we have a formulation that it is water resistant. So in order for you to decompose that one, you would have to expose it to different microorganisms that eventually would eat it. Like that is different from plastic or petrol-derived products. Microorganisms don't usually degrade them. So that's the difference. This one, because you would do it like that. We have another type that it's not water resistant. So if you put it in water, after a week, it will slowly dissolve.
Okay, but the one that's water resistant, would that require like industrial composting or no? Okay, but it's in a landfill. Okay.
And we haven't measured yet for how long it will be there, but we don't expect it to last longer than a year.
Okay,
great. So we have some questions from the audience. Meg Thomas asks, is bind ethics still in the research phase, or does it have a formula that is ready for testing and case studies? If there is a formula, does it have a safety data sheet that's available to the public? Good question, Meg.
Yeah, there's so many questions. What is it? So then I can answer one by one. I can't remember now.
Sorry, we will have a transcript of this, which we will give you afterwards, Maria.
Yeah, so we keep on doing research. And as I said, different applications. So we started with wood. Now we're moving into packaging, paper, glass. Like we keep on doing research, but we do have certain applications that are ready to go. Well, they're not ready to go to the market. We are in scaling up phases and having looking for people to for us to have the case study. So then we are ready. And we have product. We have the prototype.
So you told me before, Maria, that you are mainly not ready to go to market because of supply chain, right? So you have enough, the product exists and you can make a limited supply of it, which you want to use in order to raise awareness. but you don't yet have the supply chain in place in order to kind of mass produce. Is that right?
Well, we were like, that was the last time we talked. We've worked on that since then. We've worked on that. So now we are getting the supply chain in place as well. So if we were to have a huge order, there would be a way for us to keep on going. So basically the struggle that we had back then to set up the supply chain was money, was the finance. Like, we need some funding in order for us to, but that's been coming slowly. So that is also growing. We want to be prepared to supply big.
Right. Well, I mean,
yeah,
I would think you would be like Oddbox, a really great example of a company that should have, great growth capabilities as well as great circular capabilities. Great. So do you have a safety data sheet though?
So that's the thing, the way it goes, because it's a chemical, we are passing through the test of REACH, the chemical REACH. So that's what we are going through. But we were going through, and it was kind of hard to get the safety data sheet because our chemicals are so, basically with food waste, they're so harmless that they were like, okay, so what chemicals are like, they didn't even know if we were going to need the REACH. That REACH
So they're like, does it apply?
Exactly. So we're working on that. We need to have it. But yeah, like we're not like chemically speaking, we will be able to provide it. So we're on it. Like I want the certified one, just like to have the stamp. And
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So could the adhesive possibly work as an alternative to plastic packing tape?
So plastic packing tape. So
you need heat and pressure, right? You said for.
So that was what that was at the beginning. Again, Annika, that's been months.
2 months ago.
The research kept on going. That was at the beginning. We needed heat and pressure, but we developed cold formulations. So now it's just a matter of putting the layers there and then that glues. And it does work with plastic, but so to make a tape, like what we are looking for now is biodegradable plastic, or plastic that is more sustainable. So otherwise then you lose the whole point of making a sustainable product.
Sure. Yeah.
It should work.
That's
okay. That was Annika's connection, I think. Kim, you're muted, but maybe you're still in the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was muted because I was typing and I didn't want you to hear me. Did you want to go through some more of the questions?
Yeah,
perhaps. Oh, the cost. Do you have an idea, like price point of the adhesive?
It's cheaper than the formaldehyde based one.
Oh wow!
So that's that's great. It's cheaper.
Okay, and then there was discussion, and this is probably true for using this sort of adhesive for frames and in conjunction with artworks and displays for shelving, like these sort of applications, we would have to test its compatibility. For oh, she's back.
Sorry, I was worried that I just stopped the whole webinar with my Wi-Fi. Whatever happened. But it looks like you guys are still there. That's good.
Yeah, no, we were just going through some of the comments and questions, and I was just saying that in this particular case, using this adhesive for like shelving and storage and display in museums, that we would probably have to audio test it to see, its compatibility.
Yeah, I would say like that's hilarious that the adhesive is so minimally cost that arranging for an SDS has totally disrupted the system in the end. Like it is really safe. So like that's it was not so funny because I won the certification, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's one of those hoops, I guess you're gonna have to jump through. So let's see what other questions we have quickly. I know we're over time now, so we probably can just take one or two more quickly and then we'll wrap it up. So sorry, I don't know what you guys talked about while I was gone for a second.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to share my email address. I don't know.
Yes, please do.
I don't know how.
So people are asking about different material, different substrates, basically. Could it work with paper and card, fabric? So I think they'll all be interested to know about that. And key testing variable is the shelf life. Is that what you guys just talked about?
A little bit, yeah, just touching upon this, yeah, the applicability in museum display. It's, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Needs to be evaluated.
Okay, well, I think we pretty much got through the bulk of them there. Oh, there was one other in the Q&A section, which was about whether or not different woods would react differently with your adhesive. Or if
Yeah, in principle, like in principle, the differences might be minimal, but it's worth looking into it.
Okay,
That's
great.
actually what we're doing.
Well, I'm so happy that we were able to feature you, Maria, and also to talk about this in the context a little bit more generally as well, around materials in exhibition planning and some of the issues. I think just before we go, there's a couple of things that good news products as well that you wanted to share, Kim. And I had a note of those. One of them was cellulose from Papyra.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just
I can just very quickly touch upon it. It is because throughout my sort of like deep dives and investigation of various packaging materials, I'm not a big proponent of compostable plastics for reasons I don't have time to get into at the moment, but they're essentially greenwashing for short-term transport. I'm not talking about like artwork that is going to stay in the crates for 6 months at a time. There is a product, it's not on the market yet as well, called Papyra, and it's 100% cellulose from fast-growing renewable timber in Scandinavia. And there's no additives. Again, it's just 100% cellulose. It's biodegradable and curbside recyclable. And of course, if any of these products you have, like it's not entirely comparable to the performance that you would find with a polyethylene foam, but there's definitely an application for it. Obviously, it can't be exposed to like a high relative humidity, with any paper product. But and I saw that White Cube was in the chat, or was in the there's some White Cube there in the audience. Sorry, they were testing Papyra.
Great.
For its applicability, essentially how well it functions as a packaging foam for art transport.
Wonderful.
And until we have the museums, as you said before, they're a little bit slower to approve for good reason. We need the thorough testing as well. But some field testing is also nice to see the results of.
I feel like the public and the private sector are really separated in our industry. And my hope is that, this can be something that kind of brings us together a little bit more, because I think it's just the natural way of things that it will be the private sector that is going to lead the way, and will have to with this, because they're just more agile. And like you said, White Cube is doing this, for example, this testing, and if they can share, their results, and maybe that will help give confidence to other, players like museums. And I think but we need that kind of cross-pollination in order to facilitate that. So yes, I think hopefully we can.
And so similarly, the company, I can put it in the chat as well. They're looking for other galleries, museums, institutions to test this material, and they'll send you samples of it, along with an NDA, but I encourage.
Well, and that's a good point, that it should be discussed with Packin, from Ashley McGrew. So if anyone is involved with Packin or speaks to Packin on the regular, I hope that they will pass this message along.
I was in contact with them briefly, like I think a year and a half. I haven't spoken to anyone since. So it's a good reminder to get in touch with them.
We will be distributing the recording of this, so if anyone is attending, knows someone there, they could forward it. That would be great. And it looks like Meg Thomas is volunteering to let them know. That's great. And the other thing, just very quickly, was honeycomb paper roll. right?
Yeah. I mean, just, again, like I'm again, the outcome of all my research is either, the reusable crates, reusable materials that are robust and, unfortunately, oftentimes are, composed of fossil fuel derived plastics. However, once, if they stay in use indefinitely, then, it's sort of like you give it the green light. In our, in sustainability terms. But the other one is just like, paper products, right? Like trying to use paper products when you can. And there's honeycomb cardboard. I know also White Cube again is testing the honeycomb cardboard. And as I said before, like it doesn't have the same properties, obviously, as foam, but they're using it often, testing it as, replacement for foam corners, and the results have been positive. As far as I know, there hasn't been really any incidents or issues with their testing.
Right.
And also monitoring the internal climate of the crates in comparison to the use of polyfoams. The RH and temperature essentially stay the same as it would with the polyfoam. And there's some promising. It's, maybe again, everything kind of has to be done on a case-by-case basis right now. There is no blanket material recommendation. Does this material work for the materials involved with the artwork, the fragility, like what is the requirements of this artwork, and then you can kind of piece things together on a case-by-case basis.
Sure. Well, so I think we're going to have to stop there. We're over time, but I just want to really thank you both and thank everyone in the audience. One final point from Ashley McGrew is I'm the longest serving volunteer for that organization, and unless it has a cushioning curve established that includes the effects of repeated impact, it is not likely to be used by museums or reputable art service companies.
Right. Then no. Then we can find application for perhaps else. I have the same concerns. Like it doesn't have the same, like if it doesn't have the same resilience as a polyethylene foam, or like even a polyurethane foam, which we don't want to use anyhow. But the point is like finding, can this be used to maybe perhaps ship auxiliary components for artworks? Like it could be the art itself. It could be the electrical equipment or components, or the stands, or something that doesn't require like the best possible.
And I think that's a great point, and that's something that we also talk about in the context of sea freight for museums and different parties who are a little nervous to try or to utilize sea freight. One of the things we say is like, why don't you try it for that kind of stuff? First of all, get some experience with it, and then maybe you can kind of widen the parameters once you have a bit more confidence with it. So complex display mounts that need supports, perhaps they're always breaking and shipping. Indeed, Deborah. So thank you, everyone, once again. Really appreciate your coming along and considering these things, important topics around sustainability. And have a wonderful evening. And we will be sending the recording soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Annika. Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.